Well, I just found that out.
Jay, you don't went to the dark side? Can't believe it.
Matt's going to give a 3-hour lecture on forward-facing sonar use. Right?
Wrong guy. He longer than 3 hours. Wrong guy. I'm just telling you.
Oh, folks, this is our president, Tony Lumpkin.
Hey guys,
He's
guys and gals,
he's
thank
gonna
you for being here.
make a few words real quick.
I just want to ask everybody a question, real simple question. Where on God's green earth can you be and see what you see right here? Where can you go and find this many pros? Wait a minute, I'm starting to rhyme this thing. Where can you go to see this many pros? Give them a round of applause for being here. Thank you.
Okay, let me kick this thing off. This has kind of been the headline of our event every year, is what we call our pro panel. I'm going to start from down there. That is Wes Logan from Springville, Alabama. He is a 2-time Bassmaster Elite champion. He is a Bassmaster Open Angler of the Year. One of our local pros right here. Grew up fishing in this area and knows this river very, very well. He's a friend of Bucks Island, family member of Bucks Island. Brandon Polinick, a 2-time Bassmaster Angler of the Year. And how many wins now? 6?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
He is from Nampa, Idaho. He is, Coeur d'Alene, one of those areas up there. Brandon has been in this sport a long time, and he's been one of the young guns, but is now one of the most established guys out there. Easton Fothergill is your 2025 Bassmaster Classic champion. He also won 2 Bassmaster Opens the previous year. If you don't know Easton's story, he ended up having surgery on his brain. What was the actual, was it an abscess in his brain? Healed, got cleared to be able to go and won 2 tournaments that following year. He's a Bass College champion, won the Classic in his 2nd Bassmaster Classic appearance. Bill Lowen from Brookville, Indiana, originally from Ohio. He's a 2-time Elite Series champion, just won last year on the St. Johns River. Wes won at Lake Tenkiller in Oklahoma last year. Scott Canterbury from Odenville, Alabama. He's the 2019 Bassmaster Angler of the Year. Again, local guy, knows these rivers very, very well. He's been doing this a long time. John Cruz, a 2-time Bassmaster Classic or Bassmaster Elite Series champion. Been doing this a long time, getting ready to fish another Bassmaster Classic. Todd Goat. John is also the owner of Missile Baits, if you guys don't know that. He is the brains behind it, all those products. He's got a great team over there. Todd Goad, he is an NPFL Angler of the Year, former FLW Tour Pro. He is the owner of Pulse Fish. We sell some of those products up there. Another mastermind of products. Mark Menendez, he's a 3-time Bassmaster winner. Been at this a very, very, very long time. One of our dearest friends. 35 years in this game. Then we got Matt Herron, who is the TTBC champion and an FLW champion. He's been around here a long time. This dude has owned this river for many, many, many years. And we're grateful to have this. This is one of the most prestigious panels you'll see anywhere. And it's all because these guys care enough to come spend time with you guys. So, now that I have blowharded long enough, does anybody have any questions about anything that they want to know to get started? Or you want me to kick it off? Okay, I guess we're going to start this way. Matt?
Why do you run the short?
Do you remember the year you caught the first fish that you caught on the Coosa River, the first largemouth bass? You don't. Do you remember your first win on this river?
Sure.
Tell me about
Believe it or not, it was my first major win back then was we used to have an American Cancer Society tournament put on at Lay Lake every year, and it was like 200 or 300 bucks in the big event. I went to Phil Marshall. I won it, and I ain't looked back since. That was, I think it was 1989. So I've been at it a little while.
All right, so to go with that, Mark, what's the moment, maybe the win that's been the biggest impact in your career?
I don't know so much if it was a win, Dan, but a single cast. I was lucky enough to weigh a 13-pound, 9-ounce largemouth in megabucks, and it was the biggest bass in the first 30-some years of Bassmaster competition. From that bass went to the Chattanooga Aquarium and was viewed by 2 million school kids a year. So it was probably a single cast instead of a culmination of the week. So I'd say that.
Can we capture those impressions?
Can we get those impressions? I don't know. We probably did somewhere.
I remember reading about that fish catch when I was probably in high school.
He's older than that. He's older than that. You might have been in 4th grade.
I could read. I was at least in 9th or 10th grade.
All right, Todd. What about you? What is the moment that made you go, I want to be a professional angler?
Well, I was kind of a late bloomer to this. It was kind of family first because I had 2 daughters and they were 6, 7 years apart, and they both played softball, and I couldn't be gone. In my mind, I couldn't be gone fishing when they were on the softball field. So, ran the roads with that for a long time and fished around the house, won quite a few events around the house, fished some BFL, some one-day stuff when I could get away. And in 2020, I was leading the All-American going into the final day, and ended up finishing second in that event. And I said to myself then, we were kind of in a place, we were moving to East Tennessee from Atlanta and kind of building our forever home. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to take a shot at this. I said, I know if I can get out there, I can compete. So that kind of sparked it. I've always wanted to get out there and do it, and I had the drive and the desire. I mean, I was a kid watching Bassmaster and Bob Cobb when I was a kid. We all did that. I mean, it's just that's what drives us bass fishermen, and watching TNN and doing that. But yeah, and the All-American kind of kick-started that for me, and then getting an invite to the NPFL, and that really, it's been a blessing there. And the winner of the year over there in 2023. It was just a magical season, and it's just a blast. I love being out here and interacting with the fans, and it's what I've always wanted to do, even though it's kind of later bloom in my life. So.
John, what about you? Salem, Virginia. When did you start tournament fishing, and when did you say I can do this?
I fished my first bass tournament when I was 15, and I fished it with my cousin. We just did it for fun. And then through high school, I was playing sports, just fishing some tournaments, had a good time. Then when I got to college, it got the question that everybody asked you, what are you going to do after college? And I was like, man, I don't want to have to get a real job. This is not going to be fun. I said, maybe I could try this fishing thing. So that's exactly what I did after college. I didn't pursue any type of career. I just tried the fishing thing full time, lived at home, kept expenses down, and scratched and clawed my way along for a handful of years till I was making enough money from sponsors, which took years and years to show value to other companies, and then here we are over 25 years later, sitting up on this stage, still catching fish for a living.
Scott, you've been here a long time. You competed for a long time on the Coosa River and around this area. I got to be at your first year as a professional in the FLW Tour, and I was covering that for Bass Zone, and you finished second at Smith Lake.
Yeah, that's the tournament I probably was going to talk about. You was following me the first time I really ever met you. It was my second tournament professionally ever. It was at Smith Lake. I ended up finishing second. And then, the next tournament was 2 weeks later. I ended up finishing third. So it's been a roller coaster, but I've been blessed, really blessed over my career. And probably my one thing that stands out is that Beaver Lake win. I did win at Beaver Lake flipping a Scott Campbell flipping jig. And to do it on something that I love fishing was probably the thing that stands out the most.
Bill, for a minute, I'd like you to talk about Billy and how
I knew you were gonna do that.
I'd like to see you cry.
Oh, thanks, appreciate that.
No, but he had a very unique situation with a family member, and they got behind him and his family and gave him the opportunity to do this, and it's a real cool story. And he's paid it back by being what he is.
You're gonna make me start crying before I even start. Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, I'm kind of like everybody in this room. I had that dream of being a professional angler. I can remember being a young kid, just like all of you out here, and waking up to watch Denny Brower every morning on Bassmaster, and I just thought it was amazing how he could take a flipping rod and 25-pound line and a black and blue jig and just jerk them out of the bushes. And as a kid, I can remember that's all I wanted to do. I went to college to be a conservation officer, but the whole time I was there, all I wanted to do was fish. And basically, as a young kid, my father installed flooring for a living. And one day on my way back to college, my truck broke down, and Dad picked me up. I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm not going to go back." He's like, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to fish professionally." And he said, "Well, you're going to have to get on the floor with me, so you don't have a boss to tell you can't go." So for the next few years, I fished and pretty much tried to fish everything I could to kind of try to make it. And I got to a point in my, I don't want to call it a career because at that point it wasn't a career, but I got to a point in my fishing where I was kind of stalled out. Like without some serious help or some sponsors, I wasn't going to be able to move forward. And I had a really good friend. We were in the same bass club together. We fished Wednesday nighters, Thursday nighters on the Ohio River. We duck hunted together. We deer hunted together. And he kind of just disappeared. He fell off the face of the earth. And I'm like, "Bud, where are you at?" He's like, "Well, I'm just hanging out with some friends and blah, blah, blah." Long story short, I called him up, said, "Hey, you want to go on a duck hunting trip to Lake Erie?" And he turned me down, didn't want to go. Well, on my return from that duck hunting trip, I got the call that he had passed away while I was gone. Okay? And he got, like I said, he went from hunting and fishing every day to running with the wrong crowd and got wrapped up in drugs. He ended up overdosing on ecstasy. I don't know nothing about drugs. I've never done any drugs. All I know is it took his life at a very, very short age, and it destroyed the family. Like I said, we were all in the same fishing club together, and about a year later, his father calls me up, and we'd stayed in contact. He had another son as well, and he called me up, and I immediately thought, maybe there was another problem with his other son or something. They said, "Hey, we need you to come to the house. We need you to talk to us. We want to try to help you out." So I go to their house. I have no idea what they want to talk to me about. And they're like, "Hey, look, it was your dream and our son's dream to both fish in the Bassmaster Classic. And we want to help you try to do that." So with that being said, my very first year, they helped me fish the Everstarts, which would have made me qualify for the FLW Tour. Which I don't know why we did that, because our dream was always to fish the Bassmaster Classic. So that year, thank God, I missed the FLW Tour by just a little bit. And I always say, everything happens for a reason. That's probably the reason why. So the next year, once again, we fished the Everstarts to try to qualify for the FLW Tour, but we also fished the Bassmaster Open. And that year, I was very fortunate and very blessed to qualify for both tours. And at that point in the Elite Series, it was a $50,000 entry fee. You heard me talk about installing flooring for a living and things like that. I didn't have the financial backing to be able to fish the Elite Series, but we were very fortunate to be able to qualify for it. So the Backman family, at that point, it's a big cry fest in the kitchen. He's like, "What are we going to do?" I said, "Well, we can either fish the FLW Tour or we can fish the Bassmaster." So he said, "Does the FLW Tour qualify you for the Bassmaster Classic?" And I said, "No, sir, it doesn't." He said, "Well, it looks like you're fishing the Elites." And he wrote me a $50,000 check in his kitchen to pay my Elite entry fees the first year on tour. And I'll never be able to thank them enough for that. But my first year on the tour, I think I finished 23rd or 24th in the points. Got to qualify for the Bassmaster Classic. They got to come, and basically I got to thank them and their family for what they did for me in front of the whole fishing community. So they got to live his dream through me. Like I said, I always say things happen for a reason. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. I'd give it all up if he was still alive today. But without them being able to give me that opportunity when I first started out, I definitely would not be sitting in front of you today. So for me, it was a long, hard road to get to this point, and that's been going on 22 years ago now. So for all you youngins that are out there listening to this story, it only takes a second to make a decision on something. Sometimes you're going to make good decisions, sometimes you're going to make bad. But just stop and think about your decision that you're going to make and what the consequences may be. So, yeah, that's my story, and thanks for making me proud.
Easton, you've had a very unique story. You're a winner. You've proven that. What made you, being in Minnesota, decide I want to chase green fish and brown fish for a living, and then you even moved down here just so you could fish year round, right?
Yeah, that's right. I grew up in a fishing family. My dad is actually about to be on, or tried to be on National Walleye Tour until I was born. Kind of derailed his plans a little bit, but no, I fished my first tournament with him when I was 3 years old. And just every year as I got older and more able to, I fished more and more tournaments with him. Started the high school team at my local high school when I graduated 8th grade. And we had like 20 kids on the team, competed all around state. Junior year comes around and I decided it was obviously my dream. I watched this whole panel growing up. I realized that, you can only gain so much knowledge about fishing in Minnesota. So I knew I had to go down south in college to learn how to fish, and I applied to as many schools as I could. I think I applied to like 12 schools. Sent my resume to all the coaches I could find. I think I heard back from 4 schools, one of them being Montevallo, just down the road here. And that's where I ended up going. I had the best funded team at the time, and I knew just looking at a map, I'd have access to Smith Lake, TVA, obviously Garnersville, Pickwick, and the Coosa River. I knew I'd have just so many different kinds of fisheries at my fingertips. So yeah, that's where I ended up going. But yeah, that's really where everything took off. I started as a business administration major. Went to my first tournament. That was like true traveling. I think we went to James River in Virginia was my first tournament. And that's when I knew I want to do this. It took one tournament. I went back. I switched my degree in marketing. It was all in on how do I make this a living when I graduate. It was very rocky to begin with. The guy from Minnesota does not know how to fish. He doesn't know how to wash a jig at the Coosa River. He doesn't know that, but looking back, being placed on the Coosa River is the sole reason why I'm here today. I now know how to fish current. I know how to fish, just really everything you need to be able to take it and apply it all across the country. And then, I get progressively later in my college career, and it starts, it's daunting to fish the open. It's just a financial burden. I was actually I was about to apply at Mark's Outdoors. That was my plan to kind of get into the ring. And then this was about a week before I was about to leave for the bracket tournament. And then I had my brain stuff happen. And this was 3 weeks before the bracket tournament. Went through all that, moved home to Minnesota to kind of recuperate and recover from the brain surgery. And, I was on the phone basically every day with my surgeon, the brain surgeon at UAB, just, can I do it? Can I do it? And finally he was like, all right, I'm going to write you a note. If you can send it to Bassmaster, you can fish. So the next day I drive from Minnesota to Alabama to get my boat and then drive back to Kansas where the tournament was. And, it's just crazy how that week unfolded. You don't realize how physically stressing a tournament day is until you're just cooped up in a house for a month straight and didn't move. My legs were unbelievably sore, but just everything went just perfect that week. Every decision, every fish catch. When I was laying home in Minnesota, I was on Google Earth every day. I had every pebble found in that lake, and I showed up in the tournament with 300 waypoints on a super small lake, and 3/4 of the fish I caught that week was on stuff I found on Google Earth while I was kind of recuperating, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, I ended up winning that tournament, and that was what gave me the opportunity to fish the opens. And then, yeah, they give you a truck and a boat. For those of you that don't know, they give you a fully rigged Toyota Tundra and a Nitro boat to fish the next open season, which is the 24 season for me. And yeah, they give you a $7,500 stipend for travel costs, which only gets you so far in the opens. But no, it had an amazing opens year next year. My very first open at Okeechobee, I had the top 10. And I think that's the sole reason why I was able to do what I did, because it was very daunting for me I was following Randall Tharp, and behind me was Brandon McMillan. So I was just like, this is insane. Like this, just to be amongst these anglers was insane to me. But yeah, just everything fell perfectly in place. I won 2 opens, and I won Opens Angler Year that year. It's just how all that transpired and fell into place just perfectly, from not knowing how I'm going to fish the opens to all of a sudden I'm on the Elite Series is still just beyond me how that all unfolded. I mean, it's insane, but yeah, that's a little bit about how I got to where I'm at. I see some kids out here just know that it's possible, just work hard, and that's meant to be, it'll happen.
Brandon,
Like won the classic. Yeah.
Brandon, you coming from Idaho, you've been an outdoorsman. I actually fished against you, and I think it was 2009 or something at a Bass Nation Regional on the Columbia River. I did not do well. And he said, yeah.
Easy to do there.
What got you wanting to be a professional angler?
I grew up in the probably most uncommon tournament bass fishing part of the country. I only live. A lot of people don't even know where Idaho is. Hopefully, most of you do. But when I tell people that I am from Idaho, they get it confused with Ohio, and they think I live in the Midwest. I'm like, no, I'm 5 hours from Seattle. So I'm closer to the Pacific Ocean than I am our own capital in Idaho. And so, I mean, everything is pretty much a 30-hour drive from my house. But what I learned is that it was a blessing in disguise, because our conditions change so fast, and we see so many different water conditions that it actually builds a really diverse angler. And I didn't know that at first, but it was amazing to be able to come down here and actually do the things that Bassmaster Magazine said, because a lot of it didn't apply to my house. Like we don't have shad. What's a shad spawn? Everyone that grew up on the Coosa River is like frothing at the mouth when the shad spawn happens, right? I didn't have that. I'm like, look, we got some trout that don't act like shad, and just very similar to all these guys. Something happened where, out of the norm, you were directed in a direction, like you were born to do this. Right? Circumstances happen. I was always addicted to the outdoors. My mom saw that I was addicted to fishing really early. Her best friend got married to a guy that fished local tournaments. He was a 22-year-old kid or something at the time, 23. My mom had me super young. And I was 8 years old. And I imagine like myself at 22, 23 taking some other person's 8-year-old kid out. It was probably not what he wanted to do, but I'm sure my mom's best friend was like, hey, you're going to do this. And he took me out. He had a Skeeter ZX 195 with a 200 Yamaha VMAX on it. And I remember pulling up to the boat ramp at our local lake, Hayden Lake. And I thought it was like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And to give you context, it was forest green, purple, and silver. I think that was the last boat Skeeter ever said, we will never make another boat that ugly again. I thought it was the most beautiful thing in the world. And I remember all the details of everything about that trip. And I ended up catching a 4-pounder out of a tree. And I was like, then I started to learn, like, oh, there's tournaments and people make a living doing this. And every decision from that point forward, the rest of my life was, how do I do that? And that's a common theme here down this panel. Is like, there was a point in our lives where you decide that's what I'm going to do. And then when you get that, that's the biggest blessing you can have, because then every time you come to a crossroads in your life, you have a North Star that says, is this going to get me closer to fishing for a living, or is it not? And the decision was always easy, right? It was always, if the answer is yes, it's going to get me closer to fishing on the elites, then I'm going that road. If the answer is no, I'm going the other way. And I was very blessed that I got that early, because I could have easily gotten in with the wrong crowd, didn't have a lot of money. I ended up making it through the Bass Nation because the opens were not even in the question for me. I couldn't take that much time off work. I couldn't take, I didn't have the funds to travel that far from Idaho, so the Bass Nation was my only option to, hey, when I qualify, then I'll figure out how to get there, and I'll figure out how to get the time off, and then when I qualify for the next one, I'll figure out how to do that as well. And so I qualified, I was 23 when I fished my first Classic, which is like about now the average age on the elites, but at that time I was pretty young.
Wes, you were taught by still one of the best fishermen on this river, your Uncle Kenny. Is that what got you wanting to do this? Or was there other factors?
Yeah, I would say Kenny had a lot to make me want to do this, but it wasn't the fishing side of it. I was tired of swinging that hammer and digging ditches. But yeah, he had a lot to do with me being here. My dad, my grandpa, or my papa, I guess. I don't know. I didn't really, like in high school, I fished a little bit. Like, I will say this, when my water man. Like, we'd be playing baseball in the spring, and if I knew we had a team like we could beat, I would just let the coach, like, I would tell them, I'm leaving the tournament Saturday, I gotta go make some money. Like, I'm really not worried about the baseball stuff. So that was pretty cool to think about, just looking back on it. But no, like I said, I built houses, or helped my Uncle Kenny build houses, and I didn't mind working, but I just wanted to fish, and I just saved up so much money as I could. And when it happened, like all these guys have said, especially like Brandon and Easton, like when it happened fast. Like before you ever even realize it, like you qualify for this, now you got to go fish here, and then you happen to do good there. Like Easton winning the bracket, and then getting to go to the Classic, then getting to get with the opens, and then winning 2 opens. Like it just happened so fast, and it just kind of makes you feel like you were made to do this, or good Lord was like, you're going to be a professional fisherman. Because I really don't think I'm that great of a fisherman compared to these guys that are sitting up here and the guys we compete against, every other week. I do feel like I'm going to go out there and try and outwork everybody, and eventually I'm going to run into them. And I feel like that's kind of where I try and separate myself from some of these guys, but that doesn't take away from how talented they are, because, every day I want to work to be as good as they are. But I'm not going to sit here and, not that anybody bored you or anything, I just don't have that crazy story. Like I literally just work hard and let the rest take care of itself.
Well, I got a little story on Wes. He was leading the last day of the Forest Wood Cup, going into the last day that John Cox won on Wheeler. And
Clint Davis won it.
Clint Davis at Waukesha, that's right. And I remember this kid going out from Alabama. He's like 22 or 23 years old at the time. And it is not who Wes is. I'm just going to tell you this right now. If anybody knows, his nickname is Little Ball of Hate. And it's because he hates when he doesn't perform his best. And he did not that final day. And he stood there and took every interview. Not that he wouldn't do that now, but he was the calmest, coolest guy I'd ever been around for having fallen on his face like he did. And I was so impressed by it. And now I look at him and go, hey, if you need to blow something up when you get off stage, come find me. Don't do it to anybody else, because that's what I'm here for. But it was calm, cool, and collected. And every single one of these guys, they're the most competitive people you've ever been around. And they're competing against themselves. Yes, they want to beat the other guy. But what's in front of them, they want to do better than they did the last time. And they're athletes. I don't know if any of you know this, but there was a gentleman that used to actually feed the athletes, the fishermen. He used Baylor University. He fed some of their sports teams. These guys, in all conditions, one angler, Peter Tilaveros, they put monitors on him. John used him a lot. Peter Tilaveros, in order to maintain his body weight during a day of fishing, has to consume 4,500 calories. That's how much stress they put themselves under. So these guys put themselves through a ton to do what they do for a living. Matt, give somebody a tip to just go out and catch a bass on the Coosa River. Rod, reel, line, technique. What would you say is the best thing to do?
By season or just right now, or?
Just right now. Let's do right now.
Pre-spawn, fish are moving up, fishing should get fantastic after this one that cold front we got. Shallow on the crankbait or chatterbait right now. It's gonna be done like white chartreuse, white, kind of blue tail trailer. Nebulous bait's still pretty good around here for spots. And any kind of little flat side or square bill crankbait, cover water. I mean, it's just a go out and catch fish as good as it gets. Look for gravel banks, clay points, spotted bass, and the large spots are gonna start. They should start right around the corner, headed back some of these spawning coves, be pretty close. So pretty basic right now, just cover water and try to keep something in front of them.
Easton, you have become local to this and you fish differently. That's why I'm going to ask you this question. What would you tell someone to go do right now if they were going to try to find something on the Coosa River to get bites and to be effective? Maybe not necessarily win, but just go get bites.
If I was out there right now, I'd be throwing a swim jig, probably the mouse pockets where I think they're about to head in on points and that sort of thing. So I'd be swimming a jig in the grass just where I think they may stop on the way in.
Okay, Wes and Bill, but you guys are travel partners. You fish similarly. Bill's known as the greatest swim jig fisherman in the business, and I agree. There's some really good ones out there. Bill, Easton brought up a swim jig. Kind of, you drove over this river. What would you say get started with a swim jig? And then Wes, I'm going to ask you specifically to the Coosa River what your thoughts are.
You know, I'm a lot different with my swim jig fishing than a lot of guys are. And I feel like I kind of get bites that a lot of guys miss just by the way I fish. I'm a big fan of a really light swim jig. What I mean by that, I like a 1/4 ounce swim jig, probably 95% of my time. That other 5% of the time is probably a 5/16, but a 1/4 ounce for me is typically what I'm going to start with. And the reason I always go with a 1/4 ounce is because I like to do a lot of what I call floating a jig, right? It's where I want to keep it around the cover as long as possible. I always feel like if you're doing a 3/8 or maybe a 1/2 ounce, which you're going to catch fish on that. But me personally, I feel like I'm fishing it too fast, or I call scooting it too fast, right? So for me, it's always about that 1/4 ounce. I want to use some type of trailer, typically that I can fish that swim jig really slow. The Zoom Super Speed Crawl is really good. It just has really big flappy legs. I just want to use some type of trailer that I can slow that swim jig down extremely slow. So I go with a 1/4 ounce, a big trailer. Some days I'll just wind it. Some days I'll do the Alabama shake. Everybody knows what that is. But day in and day out for me, 1/4 ounce jig, something with big appendages on it to slow it down. 30-pound Tactex braid. I'm always a 30-pound. I know a lot of guys like 50, 65-pound. I just feel like I get more action on a 30-pound braid. And then the rod to me and reel is very important. 7-to-1 arc reel. I don't like a very slow reel, and I don't like a real high-speed reel, so I always settle right in that 7-to-1 because a lot of bites are so fast and so violent that you want to be able to keep up with the fish. If I go with an 8-to-1, I feel like I winch on that fish too hard when I get the bite. The other key to me is the rod. I always use what I call a heavy action spinnerbait rod. I like a 7'6", medium heavy, fast tip. I want a rod that has a lot of backbone, but has a lot of soft tip to it. And that does two things. It lets you work the jig a lot easier. It doesn't wear you out at the end of the day. And when that fish eats it, that softer tip gives that jig to the fish. You have less tendency to pull it away from them. So if I was starting out with a swim jig, that's definitely what it's going to be.
Wes, specific to the Coosa River, with all your experience, what would your setup look like and how would you proceed?
It would, probably be set up the field as far as rod and reel setup goes, and line to a certain point. I'm not throwing crappie line out there on my swim jig though. I'm gonna be with that 60 to 65. But I think one thing big on the Coosa is they see so many swim jigs, and that's from Weiss to Jordan, basically top to bottom on the Coosa chain. And I think color is a big deal Because like I said, everybody's going to be throwing one, and you kind of got to pick your day of what color you want to try and throw. And I'll have all different colors tied on, from a brim, natural color, to a white, sometimes type of shed, and then like a darker color, maybe a real dark brown or black and blue type something. But there's always a color that I feel like they're going to fight better one day than the other if there's a swim jig fight going on. And a lot of times it can be just doing the complete opposite of what everybody's wanting to do. So let's just say you got an early May tournament going on Lay Lake, and everybody and their brother's throwing a white swim jig. I'm real bad about going behind everybody throwing black and blue, and just because it's something they haven't seen, it's the same type of action. They're still sitting in the same places, but it's just not that repetitive white, paper plate coming over their head. And it just kind of gets you. Where I've kind of learned that is, you see a lot, like the way we fish around here, if you're swim jig fishing, you see them, they'll come up and they'll roll on it, and you'll jerk, and they pulled your pinchers off, or they pulled the skirt down. You thought like you should have ate it, you missed him or something. That's tendency to a color situation. A lot of times you can swap colors in that situation, and the next bite you get, like he's going to get it good. Actually, you may lose your number of bites, but it doesn't matter if when you actually finally get a bite, you're actually catching them, so your averages actually go up. The most public that I've ever done that was probably the last day at Neely. I lost a lot of fish the final morning on a white swim jig, and about lunch I switched to a black and blue, and I caught everything that bit the rest of the day, and it was just like a light bulb went off. I'm like, I know better. Like, I know what I should have been doing, but that's just a good example of how just a little bit of an adjustment around here can really make a big difference and actually put the fish in the boat.
Brandon, pre-spawn, one thing you could do, what is it?
I could have just let Wes answer it for me. Bank draft. Doesn't matter if it's 5, 6, 8, 10-inch mag draft. I mean, that's just pre-spawn fish. When that water starts hitting 48 and starts rising, those fish start to get around shallow cover, laydowns, docks, floats, all that stuff. I'm just matching that bait to the size of the fish. The bigger the fish, the bigger the bait. And that's just one of my favorite ways to catch a fish early in the spring. And I feel like I give myself the opportunity to catch some of the biggest ones.
Scott, what about you? One thing you do that you just couldn't live without in the pre-spawn?
Yeah, I mean, pre-spawn speaking for here on vacation, I love to throw a spook. A big spook, big walking bait. I mean, it can be a pencil popper if you get some wind, but I like fishing top water anyhow. So if I'm fishing the Coosa, it's going to be top water. It's going to be a big walking bait this time of year, especially if you're around spots. Maybe if I'm at Neely Henry, it'd be a buzz bait because there's more grass fishing. Like at Logan Martin, you'd be throwing top water on those long running points. 100% of the time I'll have a top water bait, walking bait tied on this time of year.
And I can tell you that at Lake Martin, he made the day 3 cut, and I looked at him, he was pulling in, and he had a bubblegum pink buzzbait tied on, and that water temperature wasn't, 51?
Yeah.
What's the coldest you've caught one on top water?
Top water?
Yeah.
Be around 48 feet.
John, what about you? Pre-spawn, you can only do one thing.
Waking a little bit less than that.
Pre-spawn for me is two, like I really get keyed in on 2 baits. One is
one.
I said 2. I get a shallow running crankbait is really good that time of year. It really shines. Hard cover that's closest to the spawning pockets. That's what you're looking for, those areas where they spawn. Move just out from that. The rocky, any kind of rocky staging little area, your rocky point, rocky bank, anything that's rocky on the way back, that's where I really like to crank. And then also just out from that, sometimes they'll move out and suspend, and a jerkbait is really good at catching those same fish when they're not up on the rock.
Tom, what about you?
Well, being an East Tennessee guy, I'm gonna be throwing a trap this time of year. 2 years ago, when the NPFL was at Logan Martin, I finished 7th, and a lot of like at the mouths of creeks where there's some corners that have some rock on them. If and I throw a trap on 17 to 20 pound line. We make a composite rod called an Unfair Advantage. That is a 7'2" actually. But it allows you, and we named it Unfair Advantage because when you hook one, you don't lose them. They just get it. But kind of an East Tennessee cadence when you throw it out there and you find these corners that have rock out there off of them, and you gotta, it's an angle thing, and you're hitting the right angle and you're hitting that target. But when you're reeling that bait, one of the best ways we catch them in cold water in East Tennessee is you'll reel it 4 or 5 times, and you'll take your rod from about 10 o'clock to 12, and 90% of them hit it on that slack. I mean, they'll doink it like a jig bite. So that's one thing I'm gonna do. Something I'm actually gonna do this week at Smith, because it's clear water and it's spotted bass and it's pre-spawn. Spotted bass, leather, shaky head worm this time of year, cold water. I like to fish the backs of dog corners with that. And a little sneaky thing too, you know, a lot of people, how many of y'all throw a methylene trick worm when the water warms up, float worm? Y'all like throw a float worm? Try that on a shaky head and see how many spotted bass you catch fishing a methylene shaky head worm. You will catch a lot of bass in their pre-spawn period. When the spotted bass's eyes really turn red and they want to spawn, that's when they bite that worm the best.
Mark, what about you?
Well, you know, pre-spawn, it's generally cold in the morning, so I suggest Waffle House till about 8. 2 eggs over medium, raisin toast, smothered covered hash browns. Now, one of the unique things about this time of the year, when waters are cold, this is one of the best tips I can give you. There's always a bite window first thing in the morning. Conditions are terrible. It's cold. Old guys like Matt and I like to have that first cup of coffee before anything. But you get a lot of bites quickly early in the morning. Then you may go through a lull till it warms up a little bit in the afternoon. So be there early. Be there early and be there ready. Those fish, even water temperatures that will be in that 45, 43, 44, 45 degrees. Something moving can work really well. One of the 2 things that I use the most is a Strike King Series 3, a small crankbait that dives 6 to 8 feet deep. But if I can't get them to bite that little bait, I go to a little bit larger bait called a Series 4 that has a much wider wobble. The bait's a little bit bigger, has a much wider wobble. So be up early, be at them, and obviously something that's got a little bit of red on it.
And ask Mark what time he called me the first day of Gunnersville practice.
It was probably about 10:30. The guy that was cooking the skeeter beans lives there, Scott Dobbins lives there, and my truck wouldn't start because the battery was dead, which suited me fine. It was, how cold was it, guys? It was 17 degree wind chill factor, -7. My wife called me early. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm having coffee right now. I'm not going till at least noon." So, you know, I don't know if it helped or it hurt, but I did not use my own tip of getting out there early that morning.
He did the next day. All right, and some of you guys gotta have some questions. I'm coming up with all of it. My brain's only got so much information left. Okay,
Wow.
let's turn it over to you guys. Who do you want to know something from? Brandon, you're in super inquisitive. All you guys are, but you ask one of your panel mates a question. John's got one.
What?
All right, Easton, let's walk us through your Neko rig for replicating a classic win. So just go for it. Give us a little breakdown on that. There is, it's a lot to the Neko rig. It's so that's why I'm asking.
What did you say, Wes?
My rod, I like a short rod. I was using a 7-foot medium, just so I can be accurate when I'm throwing, whether it's on the sonar or in between all the tree limbs that's out there. The reel is a Blues Custom Light 300 size. The braid was your typical 8-pound braid, but where I differed is I was using a 17-pound fluorocarbon leader. Held on. I go short. I go the longest leader I'll typically do is about 2 foot. So I go short. I don't like the knot going through my guides. I think that alters my cast, gives me less control over it. So, but yeah, with that heavy leader, I basically own them when they bit my worm. I could horse them out of there. But yeah, I mean, the first day of the event, it was cloudy and had the fish down low. I was using a 332nd, and actually I was just throwing at trees. You couldn't hardly even see them. But that second day when it got sunny, bluebird skies, I went to a 132nd worm and caught them basically on the surface. So.
They quit buying the jig.
They weren't down there anymore.
They were not down there.
What hook?
I used Ray E Talisman. It's number 1. I was using the heavy guard version. It's got 2 metal prong reed guards on it.
I didn't understand any of that.
It's a worm that's crooked, hooked in the middle with a nail in the end.
Wacky worm.
Tell us how to dig the quickie, because they got plenty of them up there. They did.
They did. I think you guys bought them all. All right, Brandon, you had a question that you came up with. Who are you going to shoot something at?
Mark, I want to know a little bit of the backstory on Dardanelle. When you got the aluminum boat, because I think I still have that on VHS tape somewhere that I would like to know the backstory on when I go back and watch it and show my kids someday.
Well, Dardanelle was the second tournament of that season. We had just left Richland Chambers. And as everybody's talked about, the financial burden of what goes on in our lives is up and down a lot. I finished 48th down at Amistad and made $10,000. I had 2 young children. I'd been married a couple of years. And I had gone and done my research and found the areas. I brought 2 boats. When I came from Richland Chamber, or down south Amistad, I left my glass boat there and I went home and borrowed the G3 from a friend. So I had to put insurance on them, name him as the lost payee, the whole 9 yards. And the first morning, I did not go to Waffle House that morning. I got up very early because I wanted to be under the secrecy of where I was going, because Dardanelle has several areas in which there are causeways and little culverts or very small bridges that you really can't get a glass boat in. So I snuck into that one area. I didn't go from here to where the chicken wings were served and got about 15 bites in the first, 30 minutes of being there. And I'm thinking, well, this is the first morning of practice. What the heck am I going to do for 3 more days? And how am I going to keep it hidden that I have an aluminum boat here ready to go? I take the boat back to the motel, cover it up with a cover, wrap it up in a blue tarp and look like it was abandoned, and got my glass boat out and fished in it the next couple of days. First day of the tournament was really kind of weird. Our Bassmaster rules are if we are delayed up to half a day, the day will be canceled. We had a terrible fog delay that day, and it finally started lightening up about 20 minutes before the half day period was going to happen, where it would be cut off. And they let us go. So I had about a 40-minute run, sneaking in my area, made 1 pass and caught like 17 and a half pounds, and left immediately and got back just in the nick of time. So I did it really quick that day. The second day of the tournament, Brandon, was the day that I actually won the tournament. This is when I figured out what was going on, because I'd only spent 15 minutes and then a couple hours in there. Second day I go through there and I've got a good limit. I've got about 17 pounds. And I turn around and I head back down that stretch, and I just pitched my Strike King bait, my tube right over there where I just caught a 3-pounder, and I caught a 4.5 pounder. And I went, uh-oh. The females had slid up there and they're further along in the spawning process than I thought. And I went back to where I caught every one of those 3-pounders and upgraded with 4-pounders and ended up with a high 22 weight that day. The interesting part about day 3 was we had a terrible front come through and they canceled that day. Of course, the rumors were flying that the tournament got canceled for me because I was in an aluminum boat. That went really quick. So we didn't go that day. And we had a tremendous drop in water temperature. Water temperature fell from 65 degrees to my area, which was 51 degrees. And I really had to slow down and be more methodical and caught another 16 pounds in the tournament. The cool thing about that boat, Brandon, is that's the boat my son duck hunts out of. Yeah, he's an avid duck hunter. I didn't want him in a very small aluminum boat. It's a 17.5 footer with a 90 horsepower Yamaha that's got about 9 gazillion hours on it. But it gets him back safely.
And now we have a rule that we have to start the season with one type of boat, and you have to fish the entire season with that one type of boat. You're not allowed to go from glass to.
You're very welcome, Brad. You're very welcome.
I mean, I don't know if that's a welcome or.
Well,
maybe, but.
The backstory to that was fun. I was on the board at the time, and there were 3 anglers who shall remain nameless. One of them has a lot of initials in his name. And they were vehemently adamant. It's not fair to the rest of the field. Not just let them talk. And it's not fair. Not everybody can afford it. And I asked those guys, I said, well, Johnny Morris will give you whatever you want, won't they? And Earl Vince will give you whatever you want, won't they? And oh, yeah. I said, Well, I borrowed the boat from a friend of my brother, so it's not really relevant that, it's not fair for everybody, so I just had to insure it and go. But that boat went, 13-0 to 1, and I abstained on the boat because I had no choice. It was going away, so that's why we can't use two different style of boats in a season.
The other funny thing about that story is that the boat was getting so beat up every night that he had to rewrap it every night.
Yeah.
I was writing for Bassadon.com at the time, and I called him for his interviews, and he's like, I need to finish. We're rewrapping the boat every night of the tournament because it was getting blown off the side of the boat.
Well, I used that boat in several other tournaments, and we had a tournament here, a PAA tournament. And being the person that I am so prone to tearing up everything I own. And I get here and I do just that. I go up the river, practice up there, pre-practice. Man, it was great fishing up there. There's plenty of water up there, and I go up there the first day of practice here and didn't realize the water was falling about 6 feet. And I'm running along, and I'm thinking, those trees look a little higher above me than they did a couple of weeks ago. And about that time, I'll walk a prop, bend the blade, fish my way back down, bend the trolling motor. And so who do I call? I call Tony and Mary Lumpkin immediately. Hey, Tony, what's up? Hey, dude, I hadn't heard from you in a while. I said, hey, I need a prop, and I need a trolling motor for this little boat. He said, bring it on in. So I bring it on in. I'm like, what do I owe you, Tony? He said, just get the hell out of here. Go fishing. We'll get with you later. Well, about a month and a half later, he calls me and goes, hey, you never paid for that prop and that trolling motor, did you? I said, well, you never gave me an invoice when you put it on, so how much is it? We paid it. We've been friends here forever and ever, and that's what the great thing about Bucks is, being part of the family, even though I am a stepchild.
I got a question for Brandon. Everybody on this panel, I know we're fierce competitors, and if one of us broke down, we'd all help out and pitch in and do whatever, because it's just a tight-knit community. But one thing that you do, I don't know if a lot of you know this or not, but at the end of each Bassmaster Elite Series event, he stays and congratulates the winner and does a lot of stuff after the fact, whether he makes the cut or not. And I just think that's amazing, giving back to the sport, and that's treated him so well and that's treated us all well. And can you just tell us about, why you do that, what prompted you to do that, and just how that all came about?
Yeah. It's crazy to think, but it's going on 6 years of it now. It seems like I just started doing that, but I started in 2020 when I came back to the Elite. So I've missed 3 since then, and for different reasons, whether it was like my kids or I had something broke. One of them was Bill's win last year that I regret still. So yeah, I missed Bill's, Tyler Rovette's, and Austin Felix. Like I remember all 3 of them.
And Bill complains about it every time.
I know, rightfully so. And but honestly, I wanted to show the guys on the Elites that I was there for them, because I had left and went to the Bass Pro Tour, and I came back in 2020, and I wanted to show everyone that it was bigger than me, and that I wanted to be there, and I wanted to be part of that group. And I felt like that was the best way to support that. And then it became addictive. I learned that I actually, by watching it live, it gave me a different fuel and fire to want to win myself. And it brought back a lot of the moments that I fell in love with as a kid. And so now it's like almost just, I feel like I need to be there. And oftentimes it's really inconvenient. And so that's the only times I haven't done it, is where if it puts my kids in an inconvenient situation where we have a back-to-back with an 8-hour drive. I'm not gonna do that to them now. But now my wife just takes the camper. And so she did that at Guntersville to Lake Martin. I wanted to stay for the weigh-in at Guntersville. She grabbed a 43-foot fifth wheel and she towed it down to Lake Martin with 2 kids, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so it's not just me. It's our whole team kind of is committed to that now, and it's literally kind of an addiction to watch guys win and know that. I don't know how the sport is so much bigger than all of us, and it means so much more to all of us. At one point, we were just like these young guys out here, right? I remember going to some of my first seminars, like listening to Byron Velvick when I was in my teens, and that kind of stuff to me matters. And I think, winning trophies and all that is really cool. But I want to know, or I want everyone to know that, like, I support everybody. Whether we get along on the water or we can have our differences, whatever, like, I'm going to stand there and I'm going to watch you win. Like, even if we got in an argument on the water, which tends to not happen too often, thankfully.
Matt and Scott, I'm gonna ask you guys this question because you guys are about to fish the NPFL championship next week here at Smith Lake. And you guys, both of you have now, when you put your boat in the water in that tournament, we're gonna fish all 3 major championships. FLW Tour, or the Cup, the Bassmaster Classic, and now the NPFL. What does that kind of mean when you look back at a career? And what does it mean to be in those kinds of events?
Well, anytime you qualify for a championship, it's an accomplishment because it's a year-long battle, with some really great guys. I showed up in 2009 or 2003. I started my career at FLW as a 39-year-old, so I was late to the deal. It wasn't until I was 18 years old, the year I graduated high school, and I watched Stanley Mitchell win the Bassmaster Classic. We went down to watch the weigh-in in Montgomery. It really lit the fire with me, and you got to remember, I'm 63 years old, so the dream of making a living bass fishing was just in its infancy. And then, realizing this is what you want to do, it took me another 18 plus years to figure out, how to make it happen. I got 2 boys and a family and a wife, and, I was raised that family come first. So I'm really blessed, but no, the qualifier for these championships is always an accomplishment. I fished against, it's kind of funny, when I started at FLW, all the great anglers that were fishing the bass, all the names, the who's who that fished the Bassmaster Elite Series, Kevin Van Dam, Dean Brower, Tommy Buckle, Plunge, they were all fishing FLW and bass. And then there was also a lot of names that came along. You can look down through here, Wes Logan, Scott Canterbury, they come from the FLW Tour, so it doesn't matter really what tour it is. There's a lot of great anglers that just happen to be where they wound up with. So it's an honor and a privilege every time you get to fish one of these championships. And it's an honor and privilege to get to compete against the best that there is. So I'm 63, still love it, and it's still an honor and a privilege, and hope I get to fish a whole bunch more.
Scott?
Yeah, it's about the same for me. I mean, I started out a little later than a lot of people do now. It's a little different. I construction worker, actually a plumber when I started fishing, but making championships is what it's all about. At the beginning of the year, that's your number one goal. Number one goal is when you're going for Angler of the Year, obviously, but making the championship, which is usually like top 30 or top 40 in a division, is what you're trying to do is make that championship. No entry fee, and you're trying to fish for $100,000. I've been really fortunate. I think I fished 12 Forest Wood Cups, finished second in 2 of them by an ounce one time. Should have won $500,000. But one bite away from winning the Classic another time. So had some good ones. This will be my first NPFL championship. Looking forward to it, and hopefully more to come.
Wes, you're in the same boat because you started your career at FLW, you fished that Cup, fished 3 or 4 Bassmaster Classics at this point, and now you're going to also fish the NPFL championship. What's it feel like? Because you're still relatively young in your career. What does it feel like to have accomplished those kinds of things at this point?
Yeah, kind of like I said before, it all has happened really fast. And, on our long drives we have, we're majorly truck drivers and then secondly bass fishermen. You think about it, and I think about I was telling Paul Nick this a minute ago. I got an interview the other day, and they were like, "How's it feel to be a seasoned vet on the Elite Series?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not but 31," and they're like, "Yeah, but you realize who the rest of the age of all the guys?" And I was like, "Well, I guess so." But to think that I've been doing this for 8 or 9 years, and I'm only 31, it's a blessing, like I said before. But the championship, I feel like, is a whole different mindset. The first Classic I fished, and even the Forest Wood Cup, I didn't really think about it as another tournament like you go to win. But I think I didn't do that the first Classic I fished at Hartwell. Like, I was a little bit shell-shocked, just with all that comes with it that week. But when we went to Ray Roberts when Easton won, like, I had a mindset going into that tournament, and I was either going to win or I was going to bomb. And I had obviously a really great first day, and then it kind of just fell apart. But I didn't adjust well, and obviously other guys did. But it's going back to it's a whole different mindset. And even if you're like, if you're fishing around here fishing the Coosa River Team Trail 2-day championship, like you're going to fish that tournament different than a regular season event because you don't have any points to worry about. You have nothing on your mind but winning. So it's a really cool tournament to go to fish because the pressure's different. Like there's always pressure, but it's just trying to how to figure out how to win that tournament. And there's only going to be one guy win, so you might as well try and make it you.
John, you fished 12 of them at this point, correct?
13 so far.
All right. This is the 14th coming up, that's right. What was your first experience like in the Classic?
My first Classic was when we had it up in Pittsburgh. So it was the last summertime Classic, and it was kind of wild because
of the Allegheny jellyfish?
Yeah, there were Allegheny jellyfish. I caught a couple of them, I believe they're not on my crankbait. But all of the big names like Mark was talking about and Matt was talking about, all the big names were still Denny Broward, George Cochran. They were all, Manny M obviously won it, but that was like it's just super cool because it was like a star-studded field and me. That's kind of what I felt like. So that was super, super unbelievable. And just to have fished throughout all the, to fish against the Denny Browers and the guys that we all looked up to the times of now, and being able to see this next generation coming up that is just they're unbelievable anglers. And they're adapting their ways and making it work and making us look like we don't know what we're doing. So it's pretty amazing. And then, for like me and Bill, I was at that first tournament that Bill fished on the Elite Series at Amistad. He fished across the pocket from me. I don't know if you remember this. Me and Russ Lane were on one side and you were on the other side fishing that road bed that had been bushes on each side. And there he shows up with his swim jig in this gin clear water. It looked like a giant swimming pool. He's swimming a jig through these bushes, catching 4-pounder after 4-pounder. And me and Russ looked at each other and we're like, I think that Lone guy will be all right out here. It looks like he knows what he's doing. And then here we are 21 years later, and Bill is the oldest guy in this Cummings Bassmaster Classic. I'm the second oldest. So you got the old guys up here now.
I guess that makes me third.
Yeah. Hey, the gray and the beard here.
I guess that makes me third oldest.
I do want to shout out Mr. Bill. Bill does something really cool every time he makes a cut on the Elite Series and gives the kids in the crowd a Bassmaster membership. He gets Miss Jennifer to go meet with them, get all their information. But like kind of going about like Polnick does when he stays for the winter. It's like, what made you want to start doing that and kind of like give back to the bass community?
Well, to answer that, I kind of look at it back when I was a kid. Like I said, my love was always to be a professional angler. I love looking at Bassmaster magazine. I can remember after school, I'd always walk down to the marina on the Ohio River, and there was always this piece of concrete that slid in the water. And I can remember it like it was yesterday, standing on that piece of concrete, saying that I wanted to be like Denny Browers today. So when I look at my career over the years, or even when I got started, my dad was a tournament fisherman. I had uncles that fished. It just always seemed like there was somebody taking time out of their schedule, whether it was to help me with fishing, help me with hunting, or just life in general. Somebody was always taking time out to help me. So I've always been that guy that I get more enjoyment out of giving back than I do receiving. So I just wanted to try to figure out a way to kind of give back. And, like Wes said, every time I make a Saturday cut, I'll pick a kid or a couple kids out of the crowd, and I give them a Bassmaster membership. I do that for the simple fact of I remember what it was like as a kid growing up, reading that magazine, seeing all my idols in there and wanting to be like them. Give me a dream, give me something to chase. And if I can change just one kid's life by simply giving them a Bass membership, then I've done my job. Like I said, I just try to give back. And I don't know how long I've been doing that. It's been a really long time. I have no idea how many memberships I've given out. I think last year when I won the St. Johns River, I told my wife that night before the tournament was my final day of the tournament, I said, if I win this event, we're going to give every kid in the crowd a Bassmaster membership. I don't even know what that number was. All I know is there was when I made that announcement, there was looked like hundreds of kids running to the Yamaha trailer to get their Bassmaster membership. So I started that with all intentions of just trying to get back. Because like I said, somebody was always helping me out when I was a kid, and had they not done that, there's no doubt that I wouldn't be set up here today.
Easton, I'm gonna ask you this question. I remember Brandon's first classic. I've worked really hard to stay professional, but a lot of these guys are my friends. But I remember Brandon's first classic, and he was so respectful to the history of the sport. Brandon, let me start with you. Did that ever feel like overwhelming to you to be in your first classic? That was at New Orleans in 2011.
It was very overwhelming because I had never fished against any of those guys. The Bassmaster Classic was my first professional event I had ever fished because I qualified through the Bass Nation. So I'd never fished an open, none of that. I'd never fished anywhere on the East Coast, really hardly at all at that point. And so, I'd fished the All-American and had a few things like that, but never to that level. And I had to look at it and say, okay, last week I was reading and trying to emulate trying to copy everything these guys were doing, right? I read it in the magazine, I look at it online, and then I would try to copy that or try to do that in my way at home. And this week I have to beat them. So I'm literally taking the things that I learned from these guys and I have to beat them with what they taught me. How's that going to work? And I guess all of the years of wrestling and being competitive, I just had to get in a mindset of you qualified to be here, you earned your right to be here, now prove it. And being 16 years into it now, I realized that first classic, second, third, when you're not a big name, that's your best time to win because you're flying under the radar of a lot of the other things, right? You don't have the camera boats, the reporters. I see it now. We go to media day. There's always a few guys sitting at the table. Nobody's really talking to them. They don't really have much. They have one thing to worry about, and that is catching bass. And that is a great position to be in. And so I wish I had that much insight back then. Then I was like, well, nobody knows me, so I guess I just do whatever I want. And I happened to stumble upon the greatest place in the entire desert.
And at that first classic, you asked me for an autograph.
Still have it.
Practice. So that shows you how humble he is. And do you remember? I remember when we pulled up after the third day of the tournament. You lost, not to throw salt on the wounds, but you lost some really big fish in that tournament. And I remember you looked over at Kevin, and Kevin gave you some advice.
Yeah, he did. He told me, just calm down. He said, you don't have to be that excited.
Stop pulling on him too hard.
Just pull on himself. Okay, Kevin, thanks.
Well, that was the same tournament so go back a little bit, and Byron and Aaron Martins had this fight at Falcon over a fishing spot. 20-year friendship almost completely ended at that point. And I'm at the Strike King media event. Mark was there. We're sitting around in the lounge, and that show had just re-aired, and everybody's talking about it. And they asked Kevin, what do you think about that? And Kevin goes, I had no idea Aaron was that easy to break. Now I know what to do next time I'm there.
Uh-huh.
And Kevin, who is stoic, is pumping his fist and he's screaming. First day he caught him on a spinnerbait. Second day he caught him on a square bill. Well, Aaron was notorious for wanting to keep his boat light to be faster than everybody else, so only packed what he thought he needed. Kevin broke the bill off of his square bill and had caught 26 or 27 pounds, and at one point drove by Aaron's boat and throws it in there and goes, that's what I'm catching them on. Because he didn't have any, because he knew Aaron didn't have any of them in there.
Uh-huh.
All right, Easton, I'm going to end with you. You qualified out of the bracket for your first classic. Obviously, all the emotions of everything that you went through. You finished 16th. You had a good tournament. You have qualified for the Elite Series. You fished Florida. You struggled for 2 tournaments, and you win the Bassmaster Classic in your 3rd professional tournament of that year. What did the first experience teach you to be ready for in the second one?
I mean, there's so much that you go through in Classic Week. I just knew what to expect was the biggest thing. Like, I can't remember who told me, but someone told me you got to take advantage of every 5 minutes you get during Classic Week, and I was able to do that. Like, if there's any downtime, I'm in my boat, rigging tackle, or just being productive in some sort of way when you're not doing media stuff. But Brandon mentioned like being under the radar. Like at media day for the Ray Roberts Classic, no one wanted to talk to who was last place in AOI. Like I rigged rods almost the whole event. Like no one was talking to me, so it was kind of crazy in that sense. But no, I mean just knowing how to tackle everything and knowing or being able to expect what was coming was huge to be able to just manage it in your mind. Just being ready for everything is huge. Like that was my first Classic. No way I win. There's no shot.
All right, final question, and then we're going to gather everybody together for a photo. All you guys, Bucks Island wants to have a photo in front of our stage. But Matt, greatest memory, biggest win, the moment in your career that's mattered the most?
That's a tough question. I've enjoyed everything about my career, but probably the Arkansas River. I won the FLW tournament there, and it was, Larry Nixon's always been one of the names of names. And I've always looked up to Larry, tremendous fisherman. And that last day, he and I were fishing the same area. And look, after that tournament was over, there was a video where the camera boats were going back and forth. And to watch Larry Nixon actually sitting there during when I seen the live production on the TV show of it, telling himself, all right, Larry, you gotta hold it together. He's catching, but you can't fall apart. And I've been on the other side of that. But to hear Larry say that, it was pretty sweet. You never know how, we're all competitors, and it's getting under their skin, but they all got their poker face, and they're not gonna show it when the world's coming unraveled, but it's just a great sport. You'll go through every high and every low, and you'll have every doubt and every positive feeling. I mean, it's just an emotional roller coaster.
Mark, what about you?
Well, Easton and I are very similar. That I had an illness that was very similar to his in 2005. Got sick up here at Gunnersville with meningitis, and it ended up basically to be the same thing in a brain abscess that I learned years later. I took a medical leave from the, which was the top 150, the Elite Series at that time, to heal. And my first tournament back was at West Point, over Georgia. And my wife, like I said, I had two young kids, a 2 and a 3, or 1 and a 2, whatever they were really young. And I told my wife, once I started feeling better, knowing that the first Open of the year was at West Point, I said, Don, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. And she says, well, honey, I just want you to get back and be yourself and do your thing. I said, you don't understand. The planets are lined up, and I'm going to win. I won that tournament by 7 pounds, going away at a very low weight tournament. That led me back to the Open Championship that year, and I made the Classic that year. So it was a complete comeback. That was a very life-changing year for me, for sure.
Todd?
I think mine actually has to be the whole 2023 season, because out of 6 NPFL events to top 10 in every one of them, you're fishing for a total of 1,500 points, and I was fortunate enough to capture 1,474 points in a season. Fishing against, the best of the best, and it's one of those years, everybody on the stage will say when it's your time to win, it's your time when they finish second. And that's all of ours go to when we don't win. Is it's not my time. But that year, just every decision I made, that whole year, I made one bad decision. Every other decision that year, everything was just perfect. And I was telling somebody earlier today, the only bad decision I made was at Santee Cooper when Patrick Walters beat me and I finished second. And it was on day one because and the fishing was tough that year. And it was like the 3rd week of May, and it really was hard to get a bite. And by 10:30, I had almost 19 pounds, and I laid off of just thinking I had it. I had a really good area. Well, the weight that Patrick beat me by was actually the difference in our day one weight. I should have just stood on it. So, lesson learned: I'll never ever lay off of anything ever again. But that season, everything went perfect. Every decision made was perfect. Just never lost a fish. It was just one of those years that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And the camaraderie of everybody out on tour, and people pulling for you and stuff. It was just a special year that I'll hold near and dear to me till the day I die.
John, what about you?
I'll have to go back to 2010 when I won the first Elite Series event out in California. I had come off a terrible year the year before, and I hadn't even gone bass fishing in 5 months, and I drove all the way from Virginia to California, and went out there and for 3 days did not have a very good practice. Had only had a few bites in one area, and really just kind of went all in on that one area, and I figured it out during the tournament, and then everything worked out, and I won that tournament by 1 ounce over Steve Reese, and you won $100,000. And when in California they like to take 7% of everything until you file for it and have to beat them down to get it back, because they'll try to give it to somebody else that doesn't need it. But anyway, so I had that win, and that check for $93,000. It helped me tremendously because I had an extremely uncomfortable amount of money in my checking account at the time.
That was an Italian salute.
Yeah, for me, it's there's been lots of times. It's probably the angler of the year, the whole year, like Todd said. It seems, special. But last year I ended up winning 2 tournaments, won one in Tennessee, and I won one on my home lake at Lovey Martin. That was probably the most special tournament that I won $100,000 in. But the year that I won angler of the year, it was just like Todd said. Every decision you made was the right one. We started the year at St. John's, and I'd never been there, and I caught like 12 pounds the first day on a rattle trap or a rattle bait, fishing shell beds, and thought I was going to do pretty good because the practice I thought was tough, and I was in like 50th. And I said, if I can catch 12 pounds again, or I might have been in 40th, if I can catch 12 pounds again, I'll get me a check, $10,000, and I'll go on to the next one. And they were playing the national anthem that morning. I was like boat 3, sitting there talking to Trip Weldon, and they were playing the national anthem. As soon as they got done, I opened my rod box and put all 4 rattle traps in the rod box and got my flipping stick out. And he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to go flip all day. If I said I get 2 bites, I might catch 12 pounds. And I caught 28 pounds that day and caught 32 the next day. So it seems like you get just a step ahead of them all year long. And it was that way all year. I might have a bad day 1, change what I'm doing. Day 2, just bust them. There was a few times that I caught them the whole tournament, but it seemed like I landed on them every day. That whole year, every decision was right. So it's super easy when things are going that way to keep it going. It seems like you don't question yourself. But when it goes the other way, it's super hard because you get those demons talking. You do question yourself. You think about if you start second guessing your decisions, you're going to do a lot worse than you do if you just go with it.
Bill, what about
Hey
you?
Scott, you're 100% right though, because you were the only one at St. Clair big line and with a jig too, catching
Yeah.
smallmouth, boat flipping 4 pounds
Yeah,
on a jig.
I did.
Everybody else was using a spinning rod. That was your year.
For me, it's hard to pick one because every win is so special. They're so hard to get, especially fishing against this group of guys. You got to be on your game every single day. For me, I'm going to have to say it was definitely my win last year at the St. John's River. The reason I say that is because, I've always prided myself on being so consistent as an angler and cashing checks, and that's kind of how I got my nickname Dollar Bill, because I was always being very consistent cashing checks. Well, when I won my first one at Pickwick, after I won that event, all I wanted to do was win again. So I changed up my style. My style was always to go out, catch enough to get paid, and if I have an opportunity to win, then so be it. That's how I was always so consistent. But after that win at Pickwick, all I wanted to do was win again. So I changed up my whole style of fishing. That was about the time when forward-facing sonar was coming, and I just kind of lost myself. I got hung up with, do I fish my traditional style fishing? Do I try to learn this forward-facing sonar? And I just when I say I lost myself, I truly lost myself. I didn't know which direction to go. I felt like every time I put the boat in the water, I needed to be concentrating on forward-facing sonar. And I had, prior to last year, I had the worst year of my career. I finished 85th in points, just like you, I lost all my confidence. So going into last season, I told my wife, I said, hey, look, we're going back to fishing the way that I fish. We're going to fish for checks. If we have an opportunity to win, then so be it. And we start the year out with a win. And it was like, hey, stupid, why haven't you been doing this the whole time? But what that did for me is gave me back my confidence to fish my style and get the train rolling in the right direction. But with that being said, I also started this year off in last place, so I really don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, Easton, you can't use the classic, that's too easy, so what's the other big moment in your career that you're proud of?
No, mine's definitely the bracket, just that 1 month period of going to where I think I might die to also want my dreams come true. So just that month period that I went through is definitely, because if it wasn't for the bracket, there's no opens, there's no elites, there's no classic, there's nothing. Like, who knows what would happen after that if I didn't win. So definitely that college bracket tournament for me.
Brandon?
That's a tough one.
You can't say meeting too.
Meeting my wife, picking her up on the dock, I know. Let's see. I'm torn. And I've had a long time to think about it going through this panel. The one for me that's the most memorable is probably Pickwick at 22 when my daughter was born. Just because that one had carried so much emotion. I mean, every time my phone rang, I'm like, well, I guess we're heading home. And then it'd be a telemarketer. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I remember day one, it's like 10 a.m. I'm catching them decent. I'm leading AOY at this point, and I'm like, just let me get through the tournament. And my wife at this point is 4 or 5 days overdue. So it could happen anytime. And I just remember my phone ringing, and I'm like, oh, here we go. It's happening, right? And I'm very torn, competitive, but I didn't want to miss the birth. So I'm like, if it happens, I'm going home. She said, no, you're staying. So every time my phone rang, I'm like, yep, I'm going home. And then it'd be a telemarketer. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And then I figured it out. Someone put a bug in my phone because between 10 and 11 a.m. every day, there was a telemarketer calling me. But that, even though it didn't work out, if you don't know, ruin the story for you. I was drove all the way home, and I was 7 hours short from making the birth of my first child. But what that did is it strengthened the relationship with my wife, knowing that she wasn't going to hold that against me, and that she was like a true team player, right? And so that, for me, that was a big moment because I won AOY in 17, and like I'd won tournaments, and she had been there. And I'm like, but that was a huge moment, and the only thing she wanted to tell me was like, you're not leaving. And so we had to argue about whether or not I was going to be there for our first kid's birth. And we decided like, oh, just drive home, nothing's happening. And then on the way home, it's like, okay, things are happening fast. And I remember being 10 hours away, and I was Googling and trying to find every private flight I could. And I was to the point where I was going to spend 20 grand to get on this private plane to try to fly home. And thank goodness she has common sense in those situations, because I was about to blow 20 grand and I still would have missed it. And, but, you know, I ended up watching the birth of my first child on FaceTime, and like, she could easily hold that against me. You know, and look at it as like, oh, you chose fishing over me, and she never once ever has. And even though I didn't win that event, like, it's just proof that, you know, you look down this panel and you hear guys like, this bad thing happened, and then this great moment in my life happened, and this bad thing, right? Like, Mark went through medical problems, Easton went through medical problems, John hadn't fished in 5 months. Like, you just listen to all these stories of, even when we think we're in control, we're not always in control. And that was a moment for me where I was like, oh, okay, this whole thing's a lot bigger than me. And like, I don't always have control as much as I think I do. So it's not always like, that's the biggest thing in fishing, is that even the most winningest anglers, Kevin, still has lost more than he's ever won. And that's how this sport works. And so you have to have short-term memory, and you have to be able to take those small wins away. Bill, you may be in last right now, but you may win next week. And it's so funny how fast that it can change. And I think that's true in a lot of things we do.
Wes, I'm pretty sure the obvious one is winning at home late.
No,
Oh, wow.
no, definitely what was the question? I mean, there's 17. So my most memorable moment in my career, which I'll consider my life, is getting to marry my wife the day we got married, for sure.
She just rolled her eyes.
She's sitting right over there. But from a fishing standpoint, and I'm true. She made me nervous. I'm truly blessed to have 2 blue trophies, because there's a lot of guys that fish their whole career don't even have an opportunity at one, and I'll never take those for granted. But I'm more thankful for day 2 at Champlain when I wrecked. I had the boat wreck. I'm more thankful that I was able to, number one, call Riley and call Lisa, and I wasn't knocked unconscious or dead or anything like that. So blessed to make it through that, for somebody being able to come get me, the paramedics getting me to the hospital, but me being able to go back out there the same day and finish my limit so to put this all into perspective, we go into day 2 of Champlain. I catch them good the first day. I don't catch smallmouth like at all worth the crap. I caught them good the first day, and the classic is like a lot. Like, all I gotta do is go out there and get 5 more bites, and I'm basically good. And 2 hours into the day, I have a boat wreck, and I don't even have a limit. I've caught 4 that don't really, they weigh something. I don't have a boat. I'm bleeding out of my head. I have broke ribs. And all I can think about, and I'm telling these doctors and telling Riley and telling everybody, just give me another hour out there, please. I can go catch one, to make everything okay. And somehow, by the grace of God, those people in Plattsburgh Hospital, I don't remember the name of it, the doctor burned my head, got it to quit bleeding, got me back out there. I go catch one. It's like a 3.5 pounder. I get back in. I don't even realize what's happened all throughout the day. Bill gets back to the campground. He's crying because I could have died. I'm crying because I think I made the classic still. And everything's all swollen. But I feel like that's just a point in my career where a lot of people figured out that how. I don't want to say I'm tough, because I just feel like I've owed it to everybody to get back out there for everything that all these companies have put into me, my family, Miss Mary and Mr. Tony and everybody here at Bucks, they pour into me. It was up to me to go back out there for them, because I didn't want to let anybody down like that. But I feel like that will be the most memorable part of my career. Unfortunately, it was a boat wreck, but it's kind of like Brandon said, the bad stuff that's happened that allows us to have great things happen, or to be able to lead by example to people. Even if you're not in a fishing tournament, if something bad happens, you still just get back up and get back out there, for not just for yourself, but for your family, or the people that are counting on you.
Well, guys, I just want to say, for me, and I know everybody here at Bucks Island feels it too, your professionalism, you spend time doing this. This is where the rubber meets the road. We all love to fish, but you guys doing this stuff is, for me, it's an honor to be able to sit here and moderate this. So thank you. Okay, folks. We're going to gather a group photo here real quick, and then we're going to do a raffle, and we're going to give a bunch of stuff away. So let's get the photo real quick with all these guys, and we'll do that. You got something else, Brandon?
No, I just want to know where we're standing.
Right there in the middle.
I mean, I know I'm up front, but other than that.
Y'all just squeeze in where you are. Well, no, y'all aren't gonna be mine. Alright, you guys ready? 1, 2, 3, we'll take this one. Perfect. Alright, good job.
I'm not there enough to know.
You're talking about canals, right?
Dana,
Heritage Day, canals,
raffle
and all that. I think they do. Like I said, we're always gone so much that we'll never get to do that. What are we drawing for?
All that stuff over there.
What's up first?
All right, what's the first prize over there? Oh, you got something to say?
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for coming today, and we really appreciate it, especially thank all of you guys for being here. And I also wanted you to know a very interesting fact that happened to us. Well, I say happened to us. Let me say the crew at Bucks Island earned the following results. This is for the 2025 model year. Number 1 Skeeter dealer in the world, right here in Etowah County. In addition to that, the number 2 Falcon dealer in the world, right here in Etowah County. 100,000 population, the whole county. We're not in the middle of Fort Worth, Dallas, right? Number 3 top bass cat dealer in the world, right here in Etowah County. 1, 2, 3. I think that's pretty damn good. Oh, excuse me, kid. I'm sorry. But to the crew of Bucks Island, y'all did a great job. Thank you all, because you helped us do that too.
All right, so we got a blue ticket. Mr. Canterbury's pulling him. It's his fault. 430068. Katie's got a hoodie and a hat over there, right? 430068. Pink ticket 107704. Red ticket 143180. Hey, there we go. Katie over here. Okay, what's next? Oh, we got a Bass Cat life jacket over there and a Bass Cat hat. Yep. 429539. 429539. It's a blue ticket. Oh, you got it.
You got
You got it. There we go. Thank you. Give it to a cat. There you go. Swell it. eBay. Another blue ticket. 430093.